All right, welcome back everyone for another deep dive with us.
It's great to be here.
Today we're tackling something that I think pretty much everyone listening has gone through or will go through at some point, and that is leaving a job.
Oh, yeah. It's something that everyone experiences.
And to guide us today, we've got a chapter from Managing Employee Termination, Resignation, Retirement, Redundancy, and Dismissal.
Sounds pretty intense.
Yeah, the title makes it sound like it's going to be all doom and gloom, but don't worry, this isn't about scaring anyone.
Right. It's about information.
Yeah, this deep dive is about understanding your options and feeling prepared, whether you're thinking about making a move soon or just thinking ahead for the future.
Yeah, and what's interesting is just how much work itself has changed.
Yeah,
I mean, that old idea of you start working when you're 16 and you retire when you're 65, it's pretty much ancient history now.
right. It's like something you'd see in an old movie or something.
Exactly.
But I'm curious, like, what's driving that shift? Is it just the economy or is there something deeper happening?
Well, it's a complex mix of factors. Global competition is really keeping businesses on their toes. They're constantly having to restructure and adapt to stay competitive.
It's really a global market now.
Absolutely. And on top of that, work culture itself is changing. The types of jobs that are available are in constant flux. And that naturally leads to people leaving jobs more frequently and for all sorts of reasons.
So it's not just about layoffs and firings, there's more to the story.
Oh, absolutely. We're seeing a rise in voluntary departures,
Mm-hmm.
things like retirement and resignation. But of course, there's still those involuntary departures like redundancy and dismissal.
Yeah.
Each situation kind of has its own nuances and things to consider, both for the employee and the employer.
So let's start with retirement then. It used to be so straightforward. You hit a certain age, get your gold watch, and that's it.
Yeah, those are the days.
But I'm hearing more and more these days about early retirement. Is that a growing trend?
It definitely is. We're seeing a lot of people opting out in their 50s,
Yeah.
which may seem surprising.
Wow, yeah, definitely.
But think about it. If you've been diligently saving and investing, or maybe you're just burnt out and craving a change of pace, early retirement could be a real possibility.
Yeah, it makes sense, I guess.
And, it's not just about finances either. Some people are choosing to prioritize experiences,
Mm-hmm.
personal fulfillment, or maybe just escaping the pressures of a traditional career path.
So it's like the whole definition of retirement is changing. It's not just sitting on a beach anymore.
Exactly. People are really redefining what this stage of life looks like for them.
Mm-hmm.
Some choose to pursue passions they never had time for. Others focus on travel or spending time with loved ones. Some even start entirely new careers, maybe something more fulfilling or less demanding. And this whole shift in perspective has even led to a rise in what's called gradual retirement, where people kind of ease into this new phase by reducing their working hours over time.
It's like they're testing the waters before diving in head first.
Exactly.
I like that approach, but it must be a huge adjustment, both practically and emotionally.
Oh, it definitely can be. And that's why it's so important to be prepared, not just financially, but also emotionally and logistically. Having a plan for how you'll spend your time, stay active, maintain social connections, all that's crucial. It's about finding a new rhythm for your life, one that brings you fulfillment and purpose.
It sounds like retirement is more about starting a new chapter than simply ending an old one.
That's a great way to put it.
But what about the people who leave their jobs before retirement age? What about resignation?
Well, resignation or quitting is all about choice. It's when an employee decides to move on for their own personal reasons. Could be a fantastic new job offer or a desire for a career change, or maybe they're just feeling unfulfilled in their current role.
Yeah, I think everyone hits that point at some time in their career where they crave something different. But even when it's your choice, leaving a job can be kind of nerve-wracking.
You're absolutely right. There are definitely practicalities to consider, like finances and notice periods. You want to make sure you're leaving on good terms, providing sufficient notice as outlined in your contract or company policy. Burning bridges is rarely a good career move.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's really important.
Speaking of leaving, our source material mentions this thing called natural attrition. What exactly does that mean? It sounds kind of like something out of a nature documentary.
It does sound like that, but it's actually a strategy that some companies use to reduce their workforce in a more subtle way. Instead of layoffs, they simply choose not to replace employees who leave voluntarily through things like resignation or retirement. It allows them to kind of gradually shrink their workforce without those major disruptions.
So it's like trimming a tree instead of chopping it down.
Exactly.
It's a much gentler approach to downsizing, but of course, not all departures are voluntary, are they? Sometimes people are forced to leave their jobs.
Unfortunately, that's true. And that brings us to the more complex and often difficult topics of involuntary departures, redundancy and dismissal.
Let's start with redundancy. I think there's a lot of confusion around what that actually means. Can you clarify that for us?
Sure, redundancy essentially means that a person's job is no longer needed. This often happens because of technological advancements, restructuring within the company, or even mergers and acquisitions.
So it's not about the employee's performance, it's more about the job itself becoming obsolete.
Precisely. And it's important to distinguish between voluntary and involuntary redundancy. Voluntary redundancy is when a company might offer packages for employees who are willing to leave, so they have a choice in the matter. Involuntary redundancy is when the company makes the decision to let go of certain positions and employees are asked to leave whether they want to or not.
That sounds like a really tough situation to be in, especially if you love your job and you're good at what you do.
Oh, it absolutely can be. There's often a sense of loss and uncertainty, even if the redundancy is handled with sensitivity and empathy. And legally, there's specific procedures that companies need to follow when it comes to redundancy and retrenchment.
So it's not as simple as just letting someone go.
Not at all. It's a multifaceted process that involves informing employees about the situation, consulting with them, providing reasonable notice periods, and ensuring they receive appropriate redundancy pay based on their length of service.
It sounds like there are a lot of legal complexities involved, but beyond the legalities, are there things that companies can do to support employees who are being made redundant?
Absolutely. Ethical employers go above and beyond just meeting those legal requirements. They offer genuine support to help these individuals transition to new opportunities, and that can include things like providing outplacement services, assisting with job applications, offering references, and even giving paid time off for interviews.
That's good to hear. It sounds like there's a growing recognition that even in difficult situations like redundancy, there's a human element that needs to be considered.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about treating people with respect and dignity, even when circumstances force these difficult decisions.
Okay, so we've talked about retirement and resignation, which are both voluntary departures, and redundancy, which, while it's involuntary, it's not about the employee's performance. But what about those situations where an employee's behavior or their performance is the issue? That's where dismissal comes in, right?
You're exactly right. Dismissal is when a company terminates an employee's employment due to unacceptable behavior or performance. It's a sensitive topic, and it's important to remember that there are different types of dismissal, each with its own set of legal and ethical considerations.
I've heard the term summary dismissal before. That sounds pretty intense.
Summary dismissal means an employee is terminated immediately, usually due to a serious breach of their employment contract. This could involve things like theft, violence, gross misconduct, or any behavior that really warrants that immediate termination.
So that's like getting fired on the spot.
Essentially, yes.
Ah.
But it's crucial to remember that even in those situations, there are legal procedures that need to be followed. Companies can't just dismiss someone without a valid reason and proper documentation.
What about those situations where the dismissal isn't due to one single egregious act, but maybe more of a pattern of poor performance?
That's where dismissal on notice comes in. If an employee is consistently underperforming or not meeting the expectations of their role, the employer can provide them with a notice period, outlining the reasons for the dismissal and allowing them time to prepare for their departure.
It sounds like handling dismissals properly is crucial for companies both legally and ethically.
Absolutely. Having clear policies and procedures in place is essential, not just to protect the company from legal ramifications, but also to ensure that dismissals are handled fairly and with sensitivity.
So even in situations where dismissal is justified, it's important to do it the right way.
Precisely. Transparency, clear communication, and a commitment to fairness are paramount in any dismissal process. And remember, employees have rights too. They have the right to know why they're being dismissed, to have an opportunity to respond to any allegations, and to seek legal counsel if they believe they've been unfairly treated.
We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive. We've explored the various ways a job can end, from the voluntary departures of retirement and resignation to the more complex and often challenging involuntary departures of redundancy and dismissal. And while each situation has its own unique set of circumstances and considerations, there's a common thread running through all of them: the importance of understanding your rights, your options, and the resources available to navigate these transitions successfully.
And as we move into part two, we'll delve deeper into some of the specific aspects of each departure type, exploring best practices for both employees and employers, and looking at how to make these transitions as smooth and positive as possible.
So stay tuned for part two, where we'll continue our deep dive into the world of leaving a job armed with knowledge and insights to help you navigate this often complex terrain with confidence and clarity.
It's going to be great.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back to our deep dive into leaving a job in part one. We explore the different ways a job can end, covering everything from voluntary departures like retirement and resignation to the more challenging territory of involuntary departures like redundancy and dismissal.
And now it's time to put on our practicality hats, right? We laid the groundwork, but now I'm ready to get into the nitty-gritty of each departure type.
Mm,
What are the specific things people should be thinking about doing or even avoiding?
exactly. Let's start with retirement, since that's often seen as the ideal way to leave a job. We talk about how the whole idea of retirement is changing with people retiring earlier and focusing on different things in this new phase of life.
But I imagine there's still a lot of planning involved, right? It's not like you just wake up one day and decide to retire.
You're absolutely right. Preparation is key, and it goes far beyond just finances. Of course, understanding your superannuation pension entitlements and overall financial picture is crucial, but it's also about envisioning the life you want in retirement and taking steps to make that vision a reality. What are your passions? What relationships do you want to nurture? How will you stay active and engaged? These are all questions worth pondering long before that final day of work arrives.
It's like creating a roadmap for your post-work life, making sure it's filled with things that bring you joy and purpose.
Exactly. And while financial planning is essential, don't underestimate the importance of emotional and social preparation. Retirement can be a huge adjustment, and some people struggle with the loss of structure and social connections that work provided. So think about how you'll fill your time, stay connected with friends and family, and even make new connections, volunteering, joining clubs, taking classes, or pursuing hobbies. These are all great ways to stay active and engaged in this new chapter.
I can see how retirement, even when planned, can bring up a lot of emotions. It's like closing one chapter and opening another, all while trying to figure out what this new story will be about.
You hit the nail on the head. And that's why seeking guidance and support can be so valuable. Talking to financial advisors, career coaches, or even therapists can help you navigate this transition with more clarity and confidence. There are also resources available specifically for retirees offering information advice and even social opportunities.
It's good to know there's help out there. Now, let's switch gears and talk about resignation. What are some things people should be thinking about when they're considering leaving a job voluntarily?
Well, first and foremost, it's crucial to have a clear reason for resigning. Is it a better job opportunity? A desire for a career change? Feeling unfulfilled in your current role? Whatever the reason, having a solid rationale will help you stay focused and make the transition smoother.
And I imagine timing is important too. There's an art to leaving gracefully, isn't there?
Absolutely. Think about things like upcoming projects, your team's workload, and your own financial situation. Before making a move, aim to leave on good terms. Providing sufficient notice, as outlined in your contract or company policy, fulfilling any outstanding commitments is essential. And expressing gratitude to your colleagues and supervisors for the experience can go a long way in maintaining positive relationships.
It's like the old saying, don't burn bridges. You never know when your paths might cross again in the future.
Exactly. And even if you're leaving because you're unhappy in your current role, try to focus on the positives of your experience. What skills did you develop? What connections did you make? What lessons did you learn? These are all valuable takeaways that you can carry with you into your next chapter.
Speaking of taking things with you, what about all those forms and paperwork when you leave a job? Are there things people are entitled to regardless of the reason for leaving?
You're talking about entitlement considerations. Yes, there are certain entitlements that are typically required by law, regardless of whether the departure is voluntary or involuntary. This can include things like any unpaid wages or salary accrued annual leave, long service leave, and in the case of redundancy pay, the specific details can vary depending on your location, industry, and the terms of your employment contract. So it's always a good idea to familiarize yourself with those details.
So it's worth taking a close look at that fine print, even if it's tempting to just skim over it.
Mm.
Now, let's shift gears again and talk about redundancy. We touched on this in the first part, but I think it deserves a deeper dive. What can employees do to prepare for the possibility of redundancy, especially in industries where change is constant?
Staying informed is crucial. Keep your finger on the pulse of your company's financial health and industry trends. Are there signs of trouble, like declining profits or major shifts in the market? If so, it's wise to start thinking about your options, even if there's no immediate threat of redundancy.
So it's about being proactive, not just waiting for the axe to fall.
Exactly. Think of it like this. Your career is like a boat, and you're the captain. You need to be prepared for choppy waters. Even when the seas are calm, keeping your skills and resumes up to date is like making sure your boat is seaworthy, Networking with people in your field, attending industry events, and considering courses or workshops to expand your skill set are all ways to keep your navigation skills sharp.
It's like that saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, the second best time is today. It's never too late to start investing in your career.
Precisely. The more marketable you are, the better positioned you'll be to navigate any career transitions, whether it's a voluntary move or an unexpected redundancy.
Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room dismissal. This is a sensitive topic, and I imagine it's incredibly difficult to handle both for the employee and the employer. What are some key things people should know if they find themselves in this situation?
Well, the first thing to remember is that you have rights, even in the event of dismissal. Familiarize yourself with your company's policies and procedures, as well as any relevant laws or regulations in your location. If you believe you've been unfairly dismissed, meaning you were dismissed for discriminatory reasons or without a valid reason, you may have grounds to challenge the decision.
So knowing your rights is like having a life jacket on board that career boat we were talking about. It's there to protect you even when the waters get rough.
That's a great analogy. And remember, seeking legal advice from an employment lawyer or a relevant union can help you understand your options and navigate this complex terrain. But even in situations where the dismissal might be justified, it can still be an emotionally challenging experience.
It's like a punch to the gut, even if you see it coming.
It absolutely can be. It's natural to feel a range of emotions from anger and sadness to confusion and even relief, depending on the circumstances. Don't be afraid to seek support from friends, family, or a therapist. Talking to someone you trust can help you process these feelings and move forward in a healthy way.
And what about the practical side of things? Losing a job, even through dismissal, can be a huge financial and logistical hurdle to overcome.
You're right, and that's where career counseling and job search assistance can be incredibly helpful. There are organizations that specialize in helping people who've been dismissed, providing guidance on everything from updating your resume and networking to interview skills and exploring new career paths.
It's good to know there's support available, so we've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive, exploring the practicalities and emotions of retirement, resignation, redundancy, and even dismissal.
We've looked at strategies for preparation, for navigating those tricky legal waters, and for finding support when you need it most. And in our final part, we'll shift our focus to the employer's perspective, exploring how companies can manage employee departures effectively, ethically, and with a focus on creating a positive work environment for everyone involved.
Because even though leaving a job is often seen as an individual experience, it really does impact the entire workplace ecosystem, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and that's what we'll explore in part 3. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to the final part of our deep dive into leaving a job. We've explored the different ways a job can end, from voluntary departures like retirement and resignation to the trickier territory of redundancy and dismissal, and we've talked about how to navigate those transitions from the employee's perspective.
Exactly, and now we're shifting gears to look at things from the employer's point of view, because let's face it, managing employee departures can be a bit of a tightrope walk for companies too.
Absolutely. It's not just about ticking the legal boxes, right? It's about creating a workplace culture where these transitions are handled with empathy and respect, ensuring fairness for everyone. But where do employers even begin?
I think it starts with a mindset shift. Instead of viewing departures as a negative, employers can embrace them as natural parts of a healthy work ecosystem. People move on for all sorts of reasons. Personal growth, new opportunities, lifestyle changes, and that's perfectly normal.
It's like accepting that change is inevitable even in the workplace. But how can employers create a culture where departures, even those that might feel disruptive, are seen as a positive?
Open and honest communication is key. Keep employees informed about company performance, industry trends, and potential changes. This transparency builds trust and helps manage expectations, reducing anxiety and uncertainty.
So if there's a possibility of redundancies down the line, don't keep it a secret. Honesty really is the best policy.
It really is. And when an employee decides to leave, voluntarily take the opportunity to learn from their experience. Exit interviews can provide valuable insights into why people choose to move, on highlighting areas where the company can improve.
It's like getting feedback. Even when someone is heading out the door, you can still glean valuable lessons.
Exactly. And it's also a chance to express gratitude for the employee's contributions and wish them well. Leaving on good terms is important for both the individual and the company.
Because even in today's competitive world, reputation matters, right? How you treat people even as they're leaving speaks volumes.
Absolutely. It influences how former employees talk about a company, and it can even impact future talent acquisition. Now, let's talk about those situations where departures are less about choice and more about necessity. Redundancy and dismissal can be challenging for everyone involved. How can employers navigate these situations effectively and ethically?
I'm all ears. These are the tough ones for sure.
When it comes to redundancy, fairness and transparency are crucial. Clearly communicate the reasons behind the decision. Follow all legal procedures meticulously and offer generous severance packages when possible. It's not just about doing what's legally required. It's about demonstrating respect and empathy for the employees affected.
And I imagine providing support during that transition is crucial too. It's not just about handing someone a pink slip and saying good luck.
You're right. Offering outplacement services, career counseling, or even financial planning advice can help soften the blow and demonstrate that the company cares about its employees' well-being, even as they're leaving.
It's about recognizing the human impact of these decisions. Now, what about those situations where dismissal is necessary? How can employers handle these delicate situations with sensitivity and fairness?
It's important to remember that even in cases of dismissal, employees have rights. Companies need to have clear policies and procedures for addressing performance issues and misconduct, and those procedures need to be followed consistently. Document performance issues, thoroughly provide opportunities for improvement, and ensure that all disciplinary actions are handled fairly and transparently.
So no knee-jerk reactions, no making decisions in the heat of the moment.
Exactly. Due process is essential, and if dismissal becomes unavoidable, handle the termination meeting privately and professionally, explain the reasons for dismissal clearly, and provide all necessary information about final pay benefits and any severance arrangements.
And even in those difficult conversations, empathy and respect are still important, right? It's about acknowledging that this is a tough moment for the employee.
Absolutely. And, even in cases of dismissal, there's an opportunity to offer support. Exit interviews can still be valuable, allowing the employee to share their perspective and the company to gain insights. Providing access to resources like career counseling or employee assistance programs can help the departing employee navigate the transition.
So it's about recognizing that even when things end, there's still a chance to part ways with dignity and grace. But are there things employers can do proactively to create a work environment where people feel valued and supported even if they eventually move on?
Absolutely. Invest in employee development, offer opportunities for growth and advancement, create a culture of recognition and appreciation where people feel valued for their contributions.
Yeah.
These initiatives not only boost morale, but also make it more likely that employees will choose to stay longer, reducing turnover and fostering a positive and productive work environment.
It's like building a strong foundation so that even when people do leave, they do so with a sense of gratitude and respect for the company.
Exactly. And when you create that kind of environment, everyone benefits: the employees, the company, and even those who eventually move on to new adventures.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this three-part deep dive into leaving a job. We've looked at it from every angle, from the employee's perspective to the employer's, and we've explored strategies for making these transitions as smooth and positive as possible.
And I think the key takeaway is this: leaving a job, whether voluntarily or involuntarily, is a significant event. It marks a transition, a change in someone's life. And approaching these transitions with empathy, respect, and a focus on fairness can make all the difference. It's about recognizing that while work is a part of life, it's not the whole story.
Couldn't agree more. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the complex world of leaving a job. We hope these insights have equipped you to navigate these transitions with confidence, clarity, and a sense of purpose. Whether you're the one leaving or the one managing the departure, remember that even endings can be beginnings.
Until next time.
See you then.